You know, Paul had a clear sense of how he needed to respond to God's grace. He understood the calling that God had given him through that grace. What about you? How do you feel about God's calling on your life? Have you considered that God has a call on your life in some way? That God's grace has changed your focus and the very purpose of your life? Have you considered how you should be responding to God's grace? Not just initially when you first heard of Him, but even still, today. You see, spiritual clarity comes directly through the grace of God. If we don't know or understand how God is calling us to serve Him, then we need to go back and revisit God's grace to us. Because God's grace is always the basis for God's work, God's leading and God's calling in our lives. God's Spirit works and moves to equip us and empower us for His purposes entirely on a basis of grace. God's calling isn't based on our greatest strengths, because God can use our strengths just as easily as He can use our weaknesses. Nothing is too hard for our God. God's calling is always found in the intersections of God's grace towards us.